Bigger than capes.
Give me some
Oh, yeah. I was looking forward to it, and then I watched it.
Right.
Hello, welcome to Bigger Than Capes. I'm Zach, and this week I'm joined by Angela, Will, and Matt, the collectiveness of Bigger Than Capes.
Hello.
Did I say I'm Zach?
Yes.
Ah, cool. Banging. How is everybody? How you all doing?
Very well, thank you, buddy. How you doing?
I am, pretty good. Can't complain. I can, but I won't.
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. The weather's picked up, so that's always great. Yeah, we're English. We've got to have weather chat.
We do. It's like a legal requirement, I think.
It is. Yeah, you get thrown out the country if you stop talking about the weather for more than a day.
But today the sun is mocking my interior isolation, as it's for once a nice weekend, and I've got nowhere to go.
That's the true sign of the distance between me and Will, because here it is a little bit windy, raining, and quite grey.
I have more Zach weather. I don't have the rain, but it's dull and cold and windy. So
Welcome to Costa del Derbyshire.
Between the two of you, like, it's a little windy, it's a little grey, no rain, and a little bit of sun.
Oh, you're like baby bears, just right.
Can really see the progression from one side of Manchester over to the other here. I think that's what it is. So this month is our March roundup of indie comics, although it's coming out in April because of the way time happens to us all.
Yeah, the way March exists.
It seemed to happen to you a lot just then.
Yeah.
Really slowly.
all hit me very slowly, but also all at once. But first, let's open this up to a little of our all catching up and whatnot. You been doing stuff, guys, or not? Or
well, I've watched the first episode of Amazon's Prime's Invincible.
Oh yeah, how is it?
Animation adaptation. I think it seems pretty good so far. I was saying earlier, it feels like a Justice League style of animation, but with loads of sort of intestines and some swearing. That's the sort of vibe on it. It's a tricky one because it's pretty faithful to the comic, and I know exactly where it's going, so it's not, for me at least, full of twists and turns.
Mm.
But it feels true. It feels true to the comic so far. So, yeah, hopefully that remains good.
Brilliant. It's something I'm hoping to check out at some point. But yeah, I have to wait a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need it all to be out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it might struggle in comparison to The Boys or Umbrella Academy by being in animation.
Mm.
I don't think it'll. I don't
cut some people off.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be as widely appealing. But I think for what they're knowing where the story goes and what it would look like with like anything less than perfect CGI, I think animation might be a good choice.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone else have anything cool?
I mean, cool is
relative.
To follow on with the conversation I had with Will last week, I finished Superstore.
Oh yeah,
it's fine.
Complete. Yeah.
And you told me that you noticed the cameo by a returning guest from this podcast.
That suggests that she's been here, and that's very much not true. Yeah, I can't remember the character's name in either thing, but the person that was in Mr. Saint Nick made a cameo as one of the heads of corporate in Superstore, and if anyone can tell me her name, that'd be great. But
I'd say by the person in Mr. Saint Nick, he doesn't mean Kelsey Grammer.
no. She is not Kelsey Grammer. God damn it, Matt! Now I have to Google this ultimately uninteresting piece of information. Ruining the podcast once again.
It's
the fact that you put Mr. and Sane and Nick in, and it still isn't the first option on IMDb. That's how little they give a shit about this film. Anna Ortiz. Anna Ortiz, who was Lorena in, of course, the cinematic classic that is Mr. Saint Nick.
Yeah,
makes a one-episode cameo in Superstore.
And I, for one, can't wait for her to be back on the podcast when she shows up in something else you watch.
You know what? I think if you wanted to do a Mr. Saint Nick podcast where you systematically went through and interviewed every single member of the cast,
except Kelsey Grammer.
Yeah, I don't think it would be through lack of trying. I just don't think Kelsey Grammer would want to do it. I think everybody else would be like, sure, why not? That's a really weird request, but okay.
We need to get, like, my big get for that would be the guy who was the prisoner. Really lovely.
I really thought you were going to say would be, if we can get you now, his brother from Frasier.
No, it's Mr. Saint Nick podcast. So, like, it'd be the guy who was the really friendly and helpful prisoner who was suddenly injected into the pot and, like, talked to everyone as if he'd been there all along. Like, if I can get
the most valuable player in a Hallmark film, if you will.
If I can get him, then I've succeeded. Because, like, the thing is, like, I feel like I mean, I love Wallace Shawn, and I'd love to have the chance to chat to Wallace Shawn. He's a great actor. He's been in a couple of, like, films I really love. And he was a Christmas wizard in Mr. Saint Nick, but he wasn't the really sweet, helpful himbo prisoner.
There are a lot of ways for this podcast to get derailed. Did anyone have money on Mr. Saint Nick for this week?
This is the most surprising of them.
I often do actually have money on Mr. Saint Nick when it's all four of us together. So
just made you a mint today.
Yeah, I'm quids in on this one.
I've just got it in my mind's eye of Matt making a documentary where instead of interviewing Kelsey Grammer because he couldn't be bothered, he ends up interviewing the owner of the dog that was starred in Frasier. Like the closest you can get. This is the son of the owner of the dog who starred in seasons 2 and 3 of Frasier.
Yeah, this is like...
I never met Kelsey Grammer. Thank you for your time.
I know the name of the dog actor who played Eddie, but I'm trying to remember it because I think he was also in like an Oscar-winning film.
Let me out. Stop the podcast.
One of them was Moose.
Yes,
that's some weird facts for you.
It might have been Moose. Might have been the one who was in The Artist. I can't remember.
What the fuck is happening right now?
I think it was.
It wasn't him.
It wasn't him in The Artist.
I mean, most of that's coming out, isn't it? That's all edited out.
It's rare that we're doing a podcast episode and like a second podcast episode breaks out in the middle of it, and it's like for a different show that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, let's tighten the reins.
Yeah. Okay, I'm back.
So,
I've done my breathing exercises. I can stop talking about it.
You guys done anything else?
No, I've just been doing my my string board, connecting all of the characters.
The hidden TV universe.
Yeah. What is it called? The Tommy Westphalen universe?
The kid that St. Elsewhere.
That's it, that links everything together. Literally every television series all goes back to the mind of a little boy in his snow globe.
Yeah. Yeah, because, didn't it, it's like, this show had a crossover with this show, and this show had a crossover with this show. And then it's all comes back to St. Elsewhere, which was in the mind of, a child. Yeah.
There's some weird matrices on the internet where you can just trace every single TV show, like this weird family tree, and it all goes back to there.
It feels like this is what Angela and Matt do when me and Will are not around.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't sound like anybody's done anything, so should we talk about these comics? We've all had far too much time on our own.
Yeah, I think we desperately need to hang out. I think that's what it is. Let's hear a word from our sponsor.
God help me! I've ended up on the Frasier wiki.
Just stop. Turn it off.
No, Matt.
So. Our sponsor is Travelling Man. They're based in Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle, and York, and they do all the things we like: comics and board games, and manga and RPGs, and CCGs, and Funko Pops, and
all the good stuff.
All the good stuff.
To spend your hard-earned bucks on.
They're available now at travellingman.com, and for click and collects by phoning them, I think, is the way that works, I guess. So, phone some people. That's all. Anyone want to add anything to?
No, I think that sums
Plenty
up
of
stuff.
Yeah.
Nailed it. Thank you. I'll be here all week. So, this is our monthly roundup.
Yes.
We're going to talk about some comics.
Yeah.
Those comics are going to be Shadecraft, Jonna and the Unpossible Monsters. Nailed it. Karmen, and Orphan and the Five Beasts.
Oui.
So I'm going to kick us off here with Shadecraft #1, which is from Image Comics. It has been written by Joe Henderson. It has been arted by Lee Garbett, coloured by Antonio Fabella, and it has been lettered by Simon Boland. So, what's Shadecraft, I hear you ask? Shadecraft, it's a comic book that we've read. So, in a nutshell, running home one night, as you do after you mistakenly kiss one of your only two friends, Zadie finds herself attacked by shadows. As you do. And then suddenly, all of her school knows about this somehow. Then we find out her brother has been in a coma for a year following a car accident. Then she gets attacked by shadows again. Then she gets saved from the shadows by her own shadow. Shadows.
Yeah.
Any questions on that synopsis?
So, does it involve shadows, is what I'm asking.
It involves some shadows.
Okay.
Very little craft. That's what I'd...
Yeah. I mean, I suppose just calling it Shadow doesn't really work as a title, does it?
No, I feel like that might have been taken.
That might have already done.
Shadow.
The Shadow, yeah.
I think he has a film. That's how successful The Shadow is. I know. I've watched it.
This year, in fact.
Yeah, surprisingly this year. Well, last year. Maybe this year. I don't know. This year's been weird.
It has.
I work with a guy who started wearing one of those face masks that you have around your neck and pull up.
Yeah.
I've
got a few of them.
And he's got this completely scarlet one at the moment. And every day I'm like, is this you low key trying to become the Shadow one step at a time? And this is just the first piece. But I don't want to mention it because I'm scared that he won't know what I'm talking about, which seems very probable.
If there was ever an opportunity, now's it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Just ask him if he knows what lurks in the heart of man.
So moving swiftly away from the Shadow to Shadows at
Shadecraft.
Shadecraft?
Yeah.
Shadecraft.
To our sponsors, Shadecraft.
This is a little bit of a weird first issue for me. I think there's a lot in the pages we have, but I feel like there needed to be more pages to kind of better pace this issue. What do you guys reckon?
I broadly agree with that. I think it suffers from the 20-page tradition.
Yeah.
Yep.
And by the end of this comic, I don't really know what the driving force is. I don't know what the stakes are. I don't know. Like you say, I don't really know what happens next. I think it doesn't. I don't think it does a brilliant job of telling you what the kind of the point is of the story. And I think over the course of a trade, that wouldn't be a problem necessarily. Like you could have those answers immediately in the next issue. But just as a standalone issue, I don't think I got quite enough out of what was there, story-wise anyway.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's interesting. I feel like the artwork kind of speaks to me more here than the actual story. I think Lee Garbett's art is really good, and I think the depiction of shadows and light is really nicely done throughout.
Yeah, the technique for the shadows is really cool. The sort of smoke effects, but sometimes it's liquidy. And I think, as you say, making something which is incorporeal seem to have weight in the panel. I think that does a really, really good job of that.
Yeah.
I felt like you had more to go to. I interrupted you.
I think you might be surprised. But yeah, I do feel like as a first issue, this kind of ends at a point where I'm not ready for it to end, and ends when I feel like there doesn't feel like there's a cliffhanger to this. It doesn't feel like there's a hook for a next issue. Kind of weird.
I had the opposite reaction, as usual.
As
usual. Because I some of it I felt was really awkward. Like the whole, hey, here's your brother who has been in a coma for like some time.
Why is it always a year? Why is it always a year?
But yeah, I mean, some of the exposition was pretty awkward, and it felt like we just have to get that in there because we have to explain hey, her brother's in a coma. We just need to explain that because we need it for the end. Spoilers. And that felt a little bit awkward. So it felt like maybe if you had longer, that sort of thing would be a bit more organic. But at the same time, because at first I was like, the shadow's actually just a metaphor for her own internal anxieties and stuff. Maybe it probably didn't help I read this after Karmen. So I was probably
it was flavoured a bit.
I was always already in that weird existential metaphysical mindset to start with, so maybe that's why I was interpreting it like that. But I did like that it ended the way it did, because I thought that, I get now what... it felt like there was now a place to go. It felt like we have established it just felt like a bit of an establishment issue. Like, we're establishing who the characters are, we're establishing the general... hey, there are shadows and they are possibly bad. And then there was also, establishing the sibling relationship. I mean, that was a bit awkward as well when he's just like, you know what, bro, I hate you. And it's like, okay, and then she's just reeling off all the reasons why. And it is, again, very exposition-y. So, yeah, there was that. But I did think the ending for me was, I felt more hooked by the ending, I think, than... certainly you two did.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Okay, that's good. Differing opinions. They're really good.
Yeah, I just think without knowing what the sort of jeopardy is, I find it hard to get hooked on, like, why is he a shadow? Why is he protecting her? What happens if he doesn't?
You see, that's what I like. I like having all those questions because I feel like there's somewhere for that to go.
Gotcha. Yeah. It hit me without that. I sort of don't care. It sounds kind of cruel.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be especially negative because, as you say, I think the art is actually really cool in this book, and in general, like the idea of shadow magic, that works for me. And I think depending where it goes, I think this absolutely could like nail on for me. But yeah, it just left me a little bit cold.
It wasn't what I was expecting because the title Shadecraft, I was expecting more. Oh, this is magic to do with the dark and the light and the shadows.
Indeed.
And that doesn't seem to be. Maybe that will appear later on, but in this first issue, that's nowhere to be seen.
Not yet.
That is fair.
I think it's funny how quickly Zadie accepts that she's being attacked by shadows.
Yeah, that interested me. The fact that it's like, man, attacked by shadows. Okay.
And if there's some background for that, then I think that works. Like if we find out that she's been assaulted by magical things throughout her life, then I think it makes sense for her to just be like, oh, right, shadows this time. Great. But I think without that, it with all the exposition in place, it seems that felt a bit rushed in terms of her reaction to being attacked by shadows was just, oh, well, this is happening and it's definitely happening. And I need to tell my friends about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure how eager I would be to be like, hey, guys, I think I just got attacked by shadows after, walking home from school. And I feel like you guys would be like, yeah, sure, okay.
Yeah, we believe you, yeah.
And not to say that her friends do particularly believe her, but it's odd to me that this starts and she talks about her... She talk about her mum being afraid of the dark? Or,
yeah.
No,
somebody is.
She's not afraid of the dark, and then her friend says about the dark being scary and so on and so forth. And so there's some underlying fear of the dark here. Maybe Illinois is just chock full of possessed shadows.
Yeah, just complete darkness.
And also, this gave me the reward of realizing that Joliet, Illinois is a real place, because I had previously believed that it was a fictional place just where the prison is from the Blues Brothers. But that is largely because I'd never really looked into anything.
I looked it up on a map once because I did think it was just a place where a prison was. And then I looked it up on a map. I was like, no, it exists.
Incidentally, though, there is a prison there.
There is a prison there, yeah.
That's where one of the two best Blues Brothers spent some time. It's a tough call. They're both really good Blues Brothers. Just continue with the facts,
I only had one more tiny bit. I just thought it was quite interesting that I think the colouring is better in the shadowy scenes, or like more interesting, which is weird because there's so little colour in those scenes. But it's got that kind of watercolour haziness about it that I think is really atmospheric.
I can see that.
Yeah.
There's a scene where she's sat at the base of a tree and the sort of the shadows of the limbs of the tree seem to be crawling towards her. And I think the colouring is really very cool in that particular bit.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting compared to when it's in light, and maybe this is completely on purpose. The colour just seems, it's good, but it seems quite ordinary in comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I think overall as an art team, I think Lee Garbett and Antonio Fabella really, really nail it here. I think it is a good looking book, and I think the colouring does really help, especially in the darker scenes. I think Will is right on that.
Yeah.
Also, and maybe this is just because it's a feature of the book, or it's because it's something I've never noticed before, but yeah, the effort to like have overlays of light or shadow, and that's something either I don't notice or isn't in a lot of books, and it is very cool. I think we have the lamp with the cutouts, which cast all the weird shadows, which is cool. Just before the panel where she's kind of surrounded by the shadows of the branches, there's a shot of an open door with the light coming through and like the flash from the camera. All good lighting details, and just let's get some more of that.
More light.
More light, more dark.
Light and dark, more acknowledgement of these
more
things.
Contrast.
Yeah. More stuff you have to add in Photoshop, basically.
Speaking of contrast, that could just be a segue to anything.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
The open-ended segue.
Gloriously vague. Go for it, Will.
My book is Jonna and the Unpossible Monsters, which from the first issue is about actually Rainbow, Jonna's sister, looking for Jonna in a world that has been seemingly disrupted by the appearance of unpossible monsters. By unpossible, they're just massive and look pretty cool. It's written by Chris and Laura Samnee, with art by Chris Samnee, colours by Matthew Wilson, and letters by Crank, which I assume is the that film.
Yeah,
he has to keep electrocuting his heart.
That's the one.
Yeah. And on the side, just does some lettering.
Yeah, has to get like adrenaline or electricity. Gets then at one point gets blown up into a giant man and has to fight. Yeah, great film.
And stellar lettering work on this issue.
Right, so Jonna, where to begin? I think a little bit similarly to Shadecraft. I think this may have benefited from a longer issue.
Yeah, I think I was super into this and then realised it was the last page.
Yeah, same.
I think that's it. I think because it is set in this quite cartoony fantasy world, it suggests all of the different things that you could learn about this world, and it has little suggestions towards them. And like you say, you only just start to get the flavour of it, and then it just stops. I think a little bit differently to Shadecraft, which is set in, we now know, a real town. I think I have more impetus, I think, to read into this more because of its fantasy setting.
Yeah, okay.
And yet I think it struggles from the same kind of storytelling problems of it not quite having enough of the core conceit yet.
I feel like a
strange sentence.
Yeah.
I feel like this is going to be a really good, like, all ages kind of trade collection thing. Yeah. I feel like it would almost be more suited to that than single issues.
Yeah, I'm not sure it works as a single. I mean, Shadecraft we've already said, but for me this worked even less because I literally got to the last page. I was like, "Is this it? Is there some bits missing? Have I missed like 20 more pages? Oh, that is it." I was really like, "Oh, this just feels like the first bit of the story far more than Shadecraft." And I was disappointed when because I was just getting into it. I was like, "Oh, this is really good. It's got the art feels quite fairy tale like, and it's there's these interesting little characters, and oh, that's it. Okay." I
do think it's nice to see Chris Samnee's art in kind of a different context than Marvel, and this is pretty adorable, which
it is.
I wasn't particularly expecting after like Daredevil.
Yeah, that's what got me, because I did have to check. I was like, is this Chris Samnee? Oh, he can actually do some interesting things given half the opportunity to do something different.
Yeah, I'm a particular fan of the art. I think I really like its sort of Cartoon Network type animation style. It might be a case of sort of familiarity and nostalgia, but all the faces just seem quite like familiar to me. Grandma Pat looks like it could have come from like Dexter's Lab, or something of that kind of era of kind of Cartoon Network.
Yeah, definitely.
And that familiarity means I feel like I know that character immediately. You don't really need that exposition, but maybe without those reference points, it might not work as well.
But I can say, like, I'm looking forward to sort of getting more of what we see on the cover. Just weird little cave girl.
Yeah.
Out with like giant Unpossible Monsters. Like this issue itself, like was fine. Like as an introduction, like it's got lots of little bits. I wish that I like you say with most comics, I guess, like I wish it had a few more pages to kind of get to some of the stuff I'd really like to actually see. But it's something that, like I say, I could see buying for one of my little cousins or like nieces and nephews as like a really good, like, fun all ages adventure comic. Like the character designs, like you say, are all really fun and cartoony. Like I love Jonna's hair, like the big sort of really like wild matted hair and stuff. Like it's got the sort of stuff that I like, and it's Chris Samnee art. So it's got kind of the sort of stuff I love in like an all ages book, like that I've not really had quite as much as I'd like since the cancellation of Thor: The Mighty Avenger.
Everything's like really chunky in the art, and the art line's really thick, and I think that just gives everything a really nice rounded, soft. The colouring goes with it as well. Things are quite fairly pastel-y.
Yeah.
And it gives everything just a nice kind of softness, even though it's depicting
very rough sort of life.
Yeah. Quite a ruined world by the monsters. You kind of get a suggestion that Jonna might have some kind of power or ability.
Yeah.
But we see very little of Jonna.
That's the weird thing I found. Like, for something called Jonna and the Unpossible Monsters, there is actually very little of Jonna or in Unpossible Monsters. Yeah. They're very, we've got a couple of panels at the beginning, and then they're basically, that's it now. We're focusing on Rainbow, which is fine because I really like Rainbow as a character, but it does feel like it's missing a bit more of the title characters.
I mean, we get to see her. I mean, we don't get to see her land the punch or whatever. No. But we get to see Jonna seemingly jump like 50 feet into the air and we assume punch some sort of dinosaur, Unpossible monster. Which, to be fair, if that's what I get to see of a cute character, I'm fine with that for a first issue. Like, but I totally get the thing of like the book is named after her and after these creatures. I wish we'd gotten to see more of both things. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. That said, in what we do see, there's some killer double page spreads.
Yes,
that is true.
In fact, the jumping face first into a monster did remind me a lot of some of the panels we got in Savage.
I was about to say that, it did remind me, that bit where she's leaping up to hit the monster. I was like, this reminds me of Savage from a couple of weeks ago.
Absolutely.
In a good way.
Not a bad thing, no.
Not a bad thing, no. I like that. And I like that because the art is so very different to Savage because it's much more cartoony. Yeah. And yet you get that lovely same euphoric feeling of seeing someone punch a monster.
That's what we're really here for.
That's what we're here for, let's be honest.
Has anyone ever read Headlopper?
It's like literally on my backlog.
It's quite different art, but if you like to see the image of a tiny person attacking the head of a 40-story monster, Headlopper is the book for you.
That's going straight to the top of the list.
Yeah, I think you'd really like Headlopper. It's good. I think there's enough in this that I am at least interested to see where it goes. I do want to see more of Jonna and said Unpossible Monsters.
Yeah.
But I just quite like the world at the moment, and I think that is enough to hook me, at least to see where it goes over the next few issues, I think.
No, I think that's completely fair, and whether I come back for the follow-up issues or for the trade, I definitely want to see where and how this goes.
Yeah, I'd probably wait till it's trade, I think, and read it all in one, because I think it will probably read better for me that way. But I do want to see what happens next. But I would like to be able to get to the end and not go, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be more there. Speaking of, is that it?
That's not it.
Stealing my gimmick.
You didn't post it to yourself, Matt.
No.
Now I hold the copyright.
TM. Right, so I'm guessing that really awkward segue means Karmen. Oh joy. Right. Prepare for bad pronunciations. I apologise to all the people involved if I pronounce your name incorrectly.
But we did try our best. We did get a native Spanish speaker.
We did. Yeah. We did consult. So
blame
Karmen
her.
1. So, Karmen issue number 1 from Image, but it is a translation. So, the story and art is by Guillem March or Mark. So, we might just go with Guillem March. There we go. The translation was done by Dan Christensen. The colour assistant, whatever he assisted with colour-wise, was Tony Lopez. And the logo for Karmen was by Jack Durio, and the lettering image was done by Chromatic Limited. I didn't think I was going to have a hard time saying that, but apparently I am. So Karmen, and I have written a summary, and it will read thus. So, Karmen is a book that explores the very fabric of reality, tucked in the places between the real and the unreal, blurring the line of the conscious and the unconscious, and balancing along the thin moment between life and death. Karmen asks us to consider the questions that only have answers in the deep recesses of our own minds. It takes us on a journey through those small moments between life's realities and death's dreams, and makes us question the possibilities of our own understanding of the very nature of the fabric of existence. And Karmen herself is a fun-loving, possibly death-personified, pink-haired crazy person who does cool knots on bandages and has no care for other people's nakedness. Discuss.
That was incredibly good. I'd thought about what would I say if this were my book, and as far as I got was, what if death was Pippi Longstocking?
Not bad.
That's a good summary, actually.
What interested me about this, so I ended up doing research into this because Image are very much billing this as like a 5-part series. It's brand new. None of those words are true. It is a 3-part, so 3-volume book already released in Spain. It's now, well, Europe, not just Spain, now available in one giant hardback. And they're also, the Image like blurb for it describes her as an unconventional angel, whereas the European blurb is just like death.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, interesting inconsistencies between the two. I feel like Image have tried to shroud it in mystery and be like vague, Whereas if you read any European blurbs, it's like, just hitting you with the facts, guys. This is...
Here's a bullet point of what happens.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to read it?
Yeah, yeah. It does feel like Image sort of didn't really know how to sell this comic. They were like, it's European, let's make it mysterious and exotic.
And I think because of that, this issue ends, like, clearly not on an ending. I think the comic just stops being there.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the same reaction I had to Jonna, except this time it was like, well, I know there's more of this because it's already been released somewhere. Yeah. Someone's just taken a guillotine and just chopped the page off at that point.
What I thought was really weird about the ending for this is it's like, if that was all, I can see that as just being a one-shot about death and a girl. I can see that being just like...
It feels like it would fit into a story in Ice Cream Man.
Yeah, that kind of anthology feel to it. That said, whilst it does feel like it's been chopped off at that point somewhat randomly, I do think this is quite a good first issue.
It is. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, I liked Karmen a great deal. I think it might be my favourite art from the perspective of like how things are framed.
Yeah, there's a lot of excellent work with panels and like camera angles.
Yeah.
And kind of like fisheye lens sort of drawings that give a weird shape to rooms.
There's like that double page where it's moving between the apartment and like the stairs, which is weird perspectiveness.
Very odd.
But makes sense how you read it as well. Like it still reads in an order that isn't confusing. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah. And we get some shots in the bathroom that are weird. I think it's weird as well because the room's tiled, so there's so many lines.
I must have taken hours.
There's a lot of work gone into that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think of all the art that we're talking about today, I think this seems like knackeringly exhausting to just draw in tile after tile after tile multiple times.
Yes.
I've got a lot of respect for that, but it's the work of a madman.
Yeah.
Well, the plot is kind of the work of a madman also.
Not incorrect, I will give you that.
Referring back to like who Karmen is, I don't know. I've only read this first issue, but I sort of hope you don't find out. I would rather it be about the stories be about the people she visits.
Yeah.
Than that much about Karmen, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I found it interesting. Although it's called Karmen, it doesn't feel like it's about Karmen. It's about Catalina and her relationship with Shishku. Have I pronounced that right? Who knows? And then also, even like little bits of life from Mrs. Bellafor, who is the crazy cat lady neighbour who has an entire backstory that's briefly mentioned. Catalina's roommate doesn't really play any part apart from she's on the sofa. But it feels like it's more about Catalina than it is about Karmen, even though the title is Karmen and she's obviously going to be the thread that ties it all together. But it's not her story. It's, in a way, it's Catalina's story. And it's just, you're almost like watching Karmen watch Catalina's story.
Yes.
Yes.
I think comparing to some of the other comics we've talked about so far today, I think the exposition is incredibly efficient. Like you learn Catalina's story in 3 pages.
Yeah.
It's quite dialogue heavy, but you get every bit of information you need from those 3 pages to kind of understand who Catalina is and why she is where she is.
Yeah. It is, if you compare it to the really awkward exposition of Shadecraft, where, you know, it's literally spelled out for you. This is telling you so much more, and it's still managing to do it in a small number of pages and a small number of panels. Yeah. So you can tell a lot of exposition in a truncated way. It's just the way you do it, and this does it really, really well.
Absolutely.
Oh no,
It
Will.
does.
Oh. He's still alive. Okay.
You briefly froze, Will.
Oh, did I? Oh, I was just saying, I agree with you, Angela.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It was a bit less awkward than that the first time round, but what are you going to do? I don't know if this is a feature that has been commonly amongst European art before, but when Carmen is taking Catalina like around the streets, and a guy comes and picks his nose and wipes his bogey right next to her.
Yeah.
Her face is so manga to me. That expression of
Horror.
like shock and disgust. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say I don't know if that is perhaps much more common in European works, and I'm just not familiar, but I think it's really great.
I think that it does feel like there's definitely a more connected relationship, I guess, between like European creators and manga influencers than we.
Yeah.
I think it's something that we see more and more frequently in American artists and British artists, but there's definitely a ton of it in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's what I like is it is clearly still a European comic, even though it's been translated. The core of it is still completely intact. It's still exactly how it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is true.
Just a little, so like, just a little thing, like, because you've said a lot of stuff that I would have said otherwise, but just a tiny little thing I love about Carmen's design is the heels.
That's something I was going to mention.
Are fantastic because like they alter, like because of the way that they alter like the structure, like the way that the feet look like, and then you just look down, you're like, oh, of course, and like you just see the way like the back arches to go into like the stiletto, the stiletto heels and stuff, and it adds so much character to the design.
Which, as a design, and we've already touched on this with the baffling amount of wall tiles, it must be real hard to draw someone and then consider where the skeleton would fit within that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's got to be a real pain.
Which, don't get me wrong, it's impressive and baffling.
I like the fact she's got the freckles that look like spots of blood.
Yeah.
It does look a bit like a blood spray.
It does look a little bit like a blood spatter.
That hadn't occurred to me, and that's really good. I
really like in a moment where she sort of scares Catalina by turning her face into a skull, but she's still got the freckles on the skull.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool as well.
There are some really. There is a really weird balance in this issue of like borderline horror and comedy and like just a lot of things. It's a complicated thing to unpack.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not easy to define.
No, it's taking quite a sideways view at sort of the death mythos, isn't it? Like, I think with Catalina, there is a sort of semi-twist when eventually you see her in the bath.
Yeah.
And I think you sort of all, it's coming.
Yeah.
But I think the way it plays out is it's sort of quite cinematic. I could see that being a reveal of a TV show where the scene kind of changes perspective and shows something that you just haven't looked at yet.
Yeah.
Which is a bath full of blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is excellent. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, this is really good. We said it with like Luna last month, but it's almost a shame that we're going to get this in singles rather than just the
graphic album.
Just
amazing
give us
graphic album it would be. Yeah,
just give us it in one go in a nice, pretty hardback, please.
Agreed.
Yeah, it'll be a thing to like. It'll be like a must own. I think when when it gets a full release as one volume over here.
Mm-hmm.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think we will just get the one trade because this is 35 pages, and I think the Spanish hardback is 176, and this is 5
so
issues.
That's very easily doable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, shouldn't be too long.
See you all back here in what, September?
Yeah, we'll be back.
Happily. Happily, I could see that being a book really worthy of discussion in one go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot to talk about as well.
Because if this with this just as I know that it's kind of pointless saying this is just the first issue, but look at all of the art because of the way that it actually originally came out, but this is just the first issue. Look at all that art. Imagine how much more there'll be to gush about.
Yeah.
When we have it all. Because like you were saying, just the kind of cross-section page, double page spread with the of the apartment, and you can see all the wires and everything going to the walls and everything, and you can see into the opposite sort of building and opposite building, connected building and stuff. I really need to see more of that.
Yeah, and I if Image are listening, and I like to think that they are.
Yeah, tag them.
Can't stress this enough that this needs to come out in a nice hardback edition, not this thing that Boom
the
do
glossiest paper that you can get.
Yeah, not this thing that Boom sometimes do where they take a European comic, release it in singles, and then give me a trade paperback. I don't want the trade paperback. I want the nice hardback.
Yeah.
So
preferably made of wood.
Yeah, preferably.
The nice French polish. Yeah.
So if Image are listening, and
if Image are listening, Will wants you to get someone to engrave this.
Yes, please.
Oak.
Yeah, artisan work. Yeah,
170 pages in tablet form.
I'd like that. It'd be heavy, admittedly.
But Image, give us something nice, please.
Yeah, something real good.
Yeah, give us what we want.
Speaking of something real good, I think it's time to talk about my book from my number one guy, James Stokoe, who did pretty much everything other than editing on this, and that book is Orphan and the Five Beasts, number 1. So, I am a huge James Stokoe fan, and so when this book was announced, I got very giddy. It's basically a supernatural kung fu comic all about Orphan Mo, who has been trained as the last disciple of a being sent out to deal with the previous students who have all seemingly fallen to evil, and it's her responsibility as the last disciple to go and ensure that they no longer perform evil deeds. And this issue takes her from her master's possible death to a confrontation with the first of the five beasts, the giant dummy thick man, Thunder Thighs. I love this book, not just because it's James Stokoe, but it's also inspired by one of my favourite martial arts films, Five Deadly Venoms, down to the point that the bath sequence with the Master is practically lifted from that film. Like, it's the dialogue is different, but the kind of like man in a huge pot being like of boiling water, only his head sticking out of it thing is directly from Five Deadly Venoms, and the sort of like five previous students, and like, you are the last student that I will ever train. Like, so you're responsible for the actions of, like, for the reputation of our house. Like in Five Deadly Venoms, it's like, go out and see if any of them are baddies. In this, it's they are all baddies. Go out and see to them. And yeah, like, and I think that this could be like, as much as I love Five Deadly Venoms, it suffers from the fact that, like, there are only two real, like, supernatural powers that are able to be displayed in that film, and that is, like, Toad, the guy with Toad style, which is basically that, like, as long as he is able to maintain his qigong, like his inner strength, he cannot be wounded at all by anything unless you, like, find this, like, he has a single weak spot, and if you touch that, then he loses all of his inner power and can be wounded like a normal man. And also, like, gecko style, or like lizard style in some translations, like, you can, like, walk up walls, because like as if you've got sticky foot pads. But like, in a comic, whilst you lack kind of the thing of like seeing human bodies doing, like, cool martial arts tricks and stuff, and, like, doing cool kicks and flips and stuff, like, you can do more of the weird supernatural stuff, and make the kind of powers granted by the styles weirder. And, like, I mean, like, Five Deadly Venoms is, like, from the late 70s, or is it 80? It's like either late 70s, like the very, very early 80s. And so, like, there's some, like, wire work and stuff in it, but yeah, like, seeing it in comics will be fun. Like, it was like Infinite Kung Fu, which is another one of my favorite books, is similarly sort of like has a similar starting point with the Five Deadly Venoms, like Flying Guillotine, Shaolin Bronze Men, all this sort of stuff. Like, but this is James Stokoe, and that to me makes me more excited than I have been for any sort of kung fu book in quite a while.
Tall statement. Best kung fu book in a while.
Yeah, sorry for, like, at least from, like, a Western publisher that I've seen.
I agree with you. Really, I think this book is brilliant. I think the art is was when I was a little bit hesitant when I was talking about Karmen. Like, I think this probably is my favorite art because I think it combines craft with this charm and this kind of signature style that James Stokoe has that I'm really into. Obviously, the tone of this book is quite different. Being a martial arts book, it's full of kind of like action moments. And I think the action is drawn really well as well. I think it has a really good sense of space and kind of choreography between the panels. I like that Thunderthigh introduces himself by just squeezing a horse in half with his thunder thighs.
See, that completely squicked me. It's really weird My gore level is fine. Had that been a dinosaur chomping on a horse, no problem. If it's a person squeezing a horse to death, I just go, oh, no, I'm out for this particular part. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's all good. It's a good book. The art is good, but that particular, I just could not with that. I had to sort of.
I totally.
I was like, nope, move on.
Yeah, we all have things like triggers that are slightly different for gore, like where it's with like how you can have a very, very high threshold in a whole bunch of circumstances, but something that's less gross in like conventionally. If you just change a slight element, you're like, oh no. Turns out this was the thing.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah, I found my line now.
Personally, thought it was hilarious. But that maybe says more about me than anything else. But I also like the fact that the 5 beasts have just one portion of the training.
Yes.
So I'm expecting all of them to have kind of one particular sort of
body
appendage or theme about them. And I really like that in sort of superhero or superpowered things where more X-Men than it is Avengers, where broadly most superpowered people are normally fast and strong, can often fly or jump long distances. I kind of like it where people have just one very specific power, and then there are interesting ways in which they use that one specific power, and sometimes they're really dumb. Like they're just they're really dumb singular powers, but when like I say, having thunder thighs, for instance, I mean, you can probably leap real high, but it's not the most practical of body parts to have supersized.
Well, there's got to come a point though where the ability to leap because of the legs is cancelled out by the weight of the legs.
Inability to land, like
what's the physics like problems there? I don't know.
He breaks all of his toes every time he like takes a step. Nonetheless, I love it.
It just like when I read Thunder Thighs, I immediately thought of The Kid with the Golden Arm, which is another Shaw Brothers film where it's like the bad guys in it are iron feet, golden arms, iron robe, and brass head. Oh, and silver spear.
Brass head is my favourite.
Yeah, brass head who like just headbutts people to death.
The art reminded me of quite early Dragon Ball.
Okay.
I think in that kind of, it might be the sort of the faces and things. I think the way that eyes are drawn and sort of surprise and expression might have some similarities. I'm not quite sure I can put my finger on it, but there was just a flavour of it. Like perhaps the way his thunder thighs are almost segmented that look like armour. I think there are a few kind of Dragon Ball characters that have that sort of segmented muscle vibe going on.
See, for me, it was oh god, what's the book called? It's Tradmore, Image, Super Violent, Luther Strode.
Oh yeah, Strange Talent and such.
Yeah, the like muscle segmented weirdly. Yeah, immediately made me think of not an insult. But
did anyone in Luther Strode? I mean, don't get me wrong. I've only read The Strange Talent. But did anyone in any of the Luther Strode books ever explode a horse from just sitting on it and crushing it with their thighs?
Not that I recall.
It's not beyond what
I feel like it was always like, on the fringes of possibility.
It was just like, I've never read The Legend of Luther Strode or any of the others, but I'm not willing to bet against there being a horse thigh crushing.
I don't think there is, but don't hold me to that because I don't want Tradmore to be like, hey, I was crushing horses years ago.
This isn't a new thing.
I've made that sound like I have regular talks with Tradmore. We do not, but if he's free, sure, hit me up.
Yeah, if he's free to talk about crushing horses with his thighs
or anything else, I'm not gonna put him in a box.
On another note, I really like the old sort of cliche of the old man who is insanely ripped.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, the just amazing dialogue of like Orphan Mo, ahead of you, demons walk the earth, go and become an emissary for hell.
That immediately made me think of, and I could be wrong, isn't Japanese Spider-Man an emissary of hell?
Oh, he's from the planet Spider. That's what I remember mostly.
I'm fairly sure when in his like lengthy introduction sequence, he describes himself as an emissary of hell, but I'm not sure why.
Emissary from hell. Yeah, emissary from hell.
Excellent.
I'm not sure what that's got to do with Spider-Man, but that's the immediate thing. It's like, isn't that Spider-Man's gimmick? With extremely unconventional Spider-Man with his Megazord and his
with great responsibility must come an emissary from hell.
What was the name of his like Megazord? Was it like Leo something?
Is it Leopardon?
Like Leopardon,
yeah. Inexplicable leopard Megazord thing that relates no possible
to spiders.
Yeah.
And I also think he drives most places, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
Spider. I don't know. There's a lot to unpack in.
But what we're saying is you should watch some tokusatsu, like television.
See how you feel afterwards.
You'll be in a better place.
You'll be in a place.
Go and watch like some Kamen Rider. Like pick a Kamen Rider series. You'll find
solid hours.
That's the ultimate takeaway from Orphan and the Five Beasts.
But yeah, no, it's real. Like it's a real good book.
It is. I will add one thing I did like about the art is the fact that the five beasts all appear as like shadows.
With like the ghost faces.
Yeah, you don't see them as they turn out to be, but yeah, you just see these weird, shadowy, almost demonic-like characters.
One of the things that this, and obviously I think it's because they're both coming from a similar inspiration point. This did remind me with the kind of five mysterious beasts of the Ninjak series from a couple of years ago, which was the Seven Blades of Master Dark, which was like the mysterious seven.
The seven
guys, Master Dark,
which are clearly like both drawing from the same like old school influences rather than
I also got that vibe.
That's a good call. I hadn't thought of that, but you're spot on.
I'm sure. Don't worry. I'm sure there's hundreds of comics that have got like the same kind of samurai film inspiration. But
I will forever recommend Infinite Kung Fu to anyone who would ever listen to me.
Oh, we know.
We just don't listen to you. That's the secret, Matt.
I really like the attention to detail on. Like just when Mo is eating in the forest, you just get a little quick panel of the food.
I'll agree with that until I see the inside of a horse's leg. Well,
that's good too.
That's where that detail needs to stop for a little bit.
So in this sort of cartoony style, that it just doesn't. It never makes me consider that has a reality behind it.
Even when you see Thunder Thighs like foot deep in organs.
Yeah. But they're like very chunky organs.
Yeah, they are very chunky.
Congrats, guys! You found my least favourite part of today's podcast.
Campbell's chunky organs.
Chunky organs. I really like when the master's in his like Kilner jar being boiled, and he has like a pipe strapped to the front.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, you just get a nice panel of him taking a good old draw of his ornate pipe. But they're like atmosphere setters. They're just. Yeah. I think Mike Mignola does it a lot in Hellboy, where you'll just get 2 or 3 panels of like statues, just to kind of set this mood.
Yeah,
I think it really works here as well.
So yeah, like I don't have much more to say about this right now, other than this is the book that I've been waiting for a while. Like the hope is that like I'm just if I'm not getting more Orcstain, and who knows if that'll ever happen, I am more than happy to have James Stokoe like kung fu book. That draws inspiration, like I say, from like kung fu films I really like.
This is his first book in quite a while as well, right?
The last full book he did was Dead Orbit.
Of course, yeah.
But I believe since Dead Orbit, he did a mini comic. I say a mini comic. It was a full comic, but it wasn't that long. Called Sobek, which is really good. And I'll figure out how to get you a copy. Because you should read it.
Good talk, Matt.
So yeah, but it always feels like it's been a long while since a James Stokoe book when there's not a James Stokoe book coming out for me. So
every month.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's everything. Shall we go into our personal rankings?
Oh Christ, I've not even thought about that. Sure, yeah, I can. but first, a word from our sponsor. Take it, Matt.
Okay, so today we are brought to you by a place where you could buy, what's this? Orphan and the Five Beasts. Why, yes, I think I will, Travelling Man. Thank you very much. Yes, that's right. You can buy your comics, your role-playing games, trading card games, manga, all sorts, pretty much anything that you could want, including Orphan and the Five Beasts. From them, they have stores in York, Manchester, Leeds, and the last one, Zach.
Newcastle.
Thank you, Angela. They are currently doing click and collect for like pull lists and stuff, and they also have a website at travellingman.com.
Parfait.
Where you can browse through their stock and order yourself something cool. Because right now we need something cool to help us get through the never-ending hell world.
Yes.
Well said.
Yeah.
So, Zach, now that you've had time to think, rankings.
Ah, Christ. Will, now that you've had time to think.
Yeah, I'll go. This is fairly easy money for me, I think. It is Orphan and the Five Beasts as my number 1. Karmen as number 2. Jonna and the Unpossible Monsters as number 3. And Shadecraft as number 4 this week.
Okay. I can see that. Damn. It's close. I think I am going to go Karmen as number 1. Whilst inevitably I want that giant hardback, I still think there's something about, quirky interpretation of death, and that's definitely very Zach. And then it is probably Orphan and the Five Beasts. It's just quite good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really like it.
I'd suspected, but I didn't want to. Then I think Will is right, and it is probably Jonna and then Shadecraft for me. I think I'm going to want more of all of these things. It just depends on the format I want those things in.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't... It was a difficult choice a little bit, I think, between Orphan and Karmen. I, a bit like Matt, but a bit late to the party, I'm becoming quite a big fan of James Stokoe. Really drawn into what he does. Pun intended.
Yeah, I'm spreading my influence and will.
But I think the dividing line between the 4 books is, I think that both Orphan and the Five Beasts and Karmen kind of stick their premise.
Yeah, and I don't think either of them hesitate on giving you all you need to want more.
Yeah, and I think the other two maybe for different reasons, but just kind of miss sticking that landing perfectly in that first issue, I think.
Yes.
But Angela, you may be here to tell me completely different. Please do.
Of course I am.
Angela.
So, oh god, it's hard. So, I actually really liked Shadecraft. I think I probably liked it the most out of the four of us present. There may be somebody out there in the real world who likes it even more. Who's to say? But at the same time, I don't think I probably enjoyed that on a basic level most, in a weird way, in terms of I can relate to the character. I struggle to relate to people going out and killing, people with big eyes, and I struggle to relate to death, or I try to struggle to relate to death.
Just a sign that me and Angela have very different lives.
Yeah. And I struggle to relate. I mean, I do relate to monsters, but there weren't enough monsters for me to relate to. So I suppose in that sense, but I can recognise that Shadecraft is quite weak in the plot and story. I'm going to put Karmen at number 1 because, and this is purely the reason why, it made me do the most thinking.
Yeah.
Which is probably a weird way to do with it, but that was the one that stuck with me. That was the one, when I'd read them, the one that I was thinking about the most was Karmen. So we'll give it that based on its power to make me think.
Very good.
Yeah. Orphan Mo and the 5 of the Beasts was very good, but I did get really squicked out by the fuss crushing. So that was never going to be... But it's up there. It's up there. Jonna and the Unpossible Monsters, just not enough monsters.
Did it?
And it just ended there. So that's got to go down. So I'm going to put that one, even though I think the art is really lovely and cute, and I actually like I'll probably read more of that than I ever will of Shadecraft, but I'm going to have to put Jonna at number 3. No, number 4. Right, hang on. Try again. Karmen, Orphan Mo, Shadecraft, Jonna, but I could easily shuffle that bottom lot, but it's just because Jonna, I got to the end of it, I was like, right, that's it then. And Shadecraft, I got to the end of it and I was like, okay, I'm on board. That was a really long-winded listing, but there you are, guys. You asked.
A mistake we won't make again.
Thank you, Angela.
So Matt.
For me, it's Orphan and the 5 Beasts, surprising no one. Then Karmen, then Jonna, and then Shadecraft. Like, I want to stress that Karmen, most other weeks or months, would have probably taken first place on art alone. Just by the sheer strength of its visual design and stuff, would have stood a good chance of being my best book of the month. But Orphan. Orphan. I feel bad when I say that Shadecraft did pretty much nothing for me. It's in no way a bad book. That's not what I'm saying. It's just it didn't click with me at all. And whether that's whether that's just due to experiences, or it's just the plot just didn't work for me. I don't really know. The art is really good though. But Orphan.
Matt's top 4: Orphan, and Orphan.
And what's this third place in a surprise? In a surprise showing, it's Orphan.
Orphan and 4 of the 5 Beasts.
Yeah, the fifth is on strike. The other 4 are just like they've crossed the picket line, and we're very disappointed in them. But yeah, so yeah, I think that's us then.
Yes, perhaps it is possible.
I'm now trying to think of what the other beasts are going to be. Hurricane hands.
Oh, hurricane hands.
Tsunami toes. Other weather conditions. Hail head.
Hurricane hands isn't a bad one.
Yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. Might mail that to myself.
And sue James Stokoe.
Yeah. Suggest it.
So yeah, Zach, do you want to see us out?
No, but I will.
Thank you.
So, I've been Zach. These 3 have been Angela, Matt, Will. We will all continue to be these entities.
Personas, yeah.
I will continue to be on the Frasier wiki looking up dogs.
We've been and will continue to be bigger than capes. And I like to think that this week we proved that comics are
bigger
than
what?
capes.
You guys did it so slow, and I did it really I did it at normal speed. Let's try that again.
Are we going slow or normal speed?
Let's go normal speed.
That comics are
Bigger
than capes.
Again.